There's this old proverb that says if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's the thread that twines our Exceptional Minds with RoboKind podcast. We want to connect you with the voices, the people, the movements, the work that's happening to promote, inspire, and achieve inclusive and celebratory moments for all. I'm Brian Baggs, CEO of RoboKind. Welcome to our episode. In this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind, we are honored to speak with Michele Sayles Harris, Chief of Student Services for Marietta City Schools in Georgia. With 30 years of experience in special education, including roles as a classroom teacher, supervisor, and executive director, Michele has dedicated her career to enhancing educational outcomes for students with disabilities. She's the 2025 Dr. Jimmy Stokes Award winner for Distinguished Service, the current past president of the Georgia Council of Administrators of Special Education, and a sitting member of the Policy and Legislative Committee for CASE. She leads initiatives to support special education administrators across the state. Join us as we explore Michele's journey, her insights on inclusive education, and the strategies she employs to empower exceptional learners. Michele, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. I'm excited to be with you today.
And I'm excited to have you here. We've got a number of topics that I am really excited to get into.
Okay.
But first, I just saw that earlier in the month of February, you guys celebrated a Yes I Can Awards. I'd love for you to tell me about that. And then also there was this hashtag at the end, Be Somebody. And I'm really curious about that too. But before we get into kind of our structured conversations, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, Yes, I Can, as you know, is an
Yeah.
award that began by the Council of Exceptional Children, Council for Exceptional Children. And it's designed to highlight the special talents of students with disabilities in 5 categories. In Marietta City, we decided to capitalize on an opportunity to not only highlight our students, but also our staff. So a few weeks ago, in the auditorium of Marietta High School in the Impact Center, we came together with approximately 40 students and approximately 45 staff members and celebrated their accomplishments over the course of the school year. When I tell you that the Yes I Can Awards event is one of my most favorite of the year, it's absolutely one of the most favorite nights of the
Yeah.
year.
I bet I can see that. Uh, so that hashtag at the end though, Be Somebody, what does that mean?
So there's a story behind that. So Be Somebody was a motto that was used by a football coach in Marietta years ago. Years
Okay.
ago. And here's the story behind the story. The
Okay. All
coach
right.
whose motto that was, Be Somebody, is the brother-in-law of a dear friend of mine. His name
Oh,
was Coach
okay.
Friday. And
All
Coach
right.
Friday believed that every child had purpose. And he
Okay.
would always say to them, when you're on this field, you're working to win a game. But when you're off the field, you have to be somebody. So a few years back, my superintendent embraced that motto and used it as a part of his welcome back speech at the beginning of the year during kickoff.
Wow.
And it has become this bigger hashtag than it was ever, I'm sure, intended to be, right,
Yeah.
by the football coach. But we have t-shirts, we have buttons, and it's not just a slogan, it's who we are in Marietta. We inspire
Yeah.
our students to embrace one another, no matter where they come from, who they are, what they bring to the table, or what they don't have. So I'm really proud of Be Somebody.
Yeah, I would be too. Words have a funny way of being able to call us in, bring inspiration, be encouragement, be aspirations too. And
Mhm.
so I saw that and it gave me a feel. I was like, wait a second, I gotta ask
Yeah.
because I love it. So,
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank
yeah.
you. It is, when you think about the Yes, I Can
Hmm.
evening,
Yeah.
and you think about something else that we'll talk about later, I'm sure, our students who are neurotypical have truly
Yeah.
embraced that almost like a vision statement for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it transcends across every aspect of what they do. I won't say that everyone's perfect in everyday examples, but you see them embracing be somebody all the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I believe that. And it's great to see. It sounds like, it's one of those things that with each layer of the organization that we embrace it, use it, and create this umbrella that folks can walk under. And when it hits students like that,
Mhm.
and they see it with their teachers and their administrators, it can be transformative.
Absolutely.
Good work, Michelle. That's
Thank you.
inspirational. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, like you could probably stop right there. Like that's your inspiration for the day. We got more content though we're gonna get into, but I that's good stuff right there. So
Thank you. Thank
thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.
So let me ask you this then.
Mhm.
What inspired you to pursue a career in special education?
Mhm.
Uh, how did this all get started?
Well, Brian, funny you should ask. So, you wouldn't believe this if you ever had an opportunity to see me in a classroom.
Yeah.
Becoming a teacher was not my first choice.
Oh, really? Okay.
It
All
was
right.
not. My mother, my stepmother, was a 45-year educator.
Okay.
She taught pre-K through college for
Oh,
45
wow.
years in the
Wow.
field of special education and general education. By the
Wow.
time she married my father, she was entrenched in the work of special education. So all I
Yeah.
saw from the age of 11 was
Hmm.
students with disabilities who at the time weren't necessarily given the opportunities to be a part of a school community.
Yeah.
I saw students who were taught in the basement. I saw
Yeah.
students who did not necessarily have the resources that some of their neurotypical peers have. I saw
Yeah.
students who didn't get to go to PE.
Mm.
So after I graduated high school and moved on to my college years, I decided, I'm not doing that because that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go into marketing and work for Delta Airlines.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into marketing. I
Oh,
majored in psychology and
okay.
I did a minor in special education. Then I got married
Okay. So
and I
you're like,
had,
I'm gonna do the psychology. I'm just gonna put my toes in this water over here of special
uh-huh,
education. And I have some experience. I've seen some things, but it still wasn't the plan, right? Okay.
right.
Okay.
Still
Got
wasn't the
it.
plan. So then I got married and I had my first child.
Yeah.
My first child, who is now a grown man and works
Yeah.
in a major organization out in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
I was laid off from Delta Airlines. I
Oh,
volunteered to
so
be
what
laid
you
off.
did get to Delta?
I
So
did go to Delta.
all right.
Went to
Okay.
Delta,
Fantastic. Yeah.
worked in human resources, had all of the privileges of Delta Airlines. But what I
Yeah.
learned in that experience was Delta was not truly my calling.
Mm.
So I had my first child.
Yeah.
And I noticed with him that I was constantly having to repeat things,
Yeah.
constantly having to repeat directions, constantly having to remind. In
Yeah.
fact, we would get to a point where I'd have to make a list in the morning and
Yeah.
I would have to color code the list so
Yeah.
that we wouldn't forget the
Yeah.
steps that we needed to take in order to get
Yeah.
dressed.
Yeah. Yep.
He went to kindergarten, and at the time I was in school working on my master's degree. And so I had time to volunteer.
Yeah.
I started volunteering and I was in that building every day and I started to see things that
Yeah.
inspired me to want to become a part of the education system so that
Wow.
I could advocate for students who learn differently.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
attribute my foray into education to my son's learning differences.
Wow. That's a story I think that will definitely resonate with folks. It's it's something when you see it, right?
It is.
And all of a sudden, all those earlier years of being surrounded by in the home and hearing the stories and putting it off to the side, but then getting that fresh look as your
Hmm.
child gets into the school system, it can call you in.
Yes.
And so what happened then? So you saw that, and then you're like, I need to make a pivot. Like, what? How did that go? Did you have a conversation with folks? What did that look like?
So ironically, I was working on that master's degree, had been laid off or volunteered off
Yeah,
from Delta, and I was in school and I spoke to my advisor and I spoke to my mom, and my mom said, "Listen, I know
yeah,
you've been running away from this for years,
It's
but
time to come home. It's
it's
time to come home.
you have what it takes,
Yeah.
and you should consider it. So I went to
Yeah.
my advisor and I said, "Hey, I think I need to switch my major." And she
Wow.
said, "Well, good thing because you're only 1 semester in." And quite
Okay.
honestly, I was taking more psych courses, right? So it
Yeah.
wasn't that big
Yeah.
of a pivot. And
Yeah.
I did. I switched my major and I decided at the time that I wanted to not support what I call low incidence populations, the students with
Yeah.
cognitive disabilities, but
Yeah.
I wanted to teach the kids that other people thought couldn't learn.
Wow.
And I wanted to teach the kids who people thought couldn't learn, but also had behavior challenges,
Wow.
right?
So you took a bite of that apple and you went all in. You're
I
like,
did.
give me the work.
I did, I did. So I graduated with my master's in behavior disorders
Yeah.
and then jumped both feet in into middle school.
Well, yeah, that's a place where the challenges are high,
Yes,
and so are the needs, and I guess in a lot of ways, so are the opportunities,
absolutely.
um, and that can make it all the worthwhile. So for some of our listeners that are coming in, so was your first middle school experience in the same general area of Georgia, north of Atlanta, or where were you at that point?
So, irony is that my first employer was in Henry County, which
Okay, all right.
basically is almost middle Georgia if you ask me.
Yep,
I was
yep,
I
yep.
was living in
Okay,
Cobb at the time,
all
so I
right.
was driving approximately an hour one way to work.
Oh
But
my
I
goodness.
loved that county. I loved what they offered, their new teachers, and I honestly think if I'd started anywhere else, I probably wouldn't have
Wow.
made it past the first year.
Yeah. So that's just so interesting. So like
Mhm.
the work is hard that you're
It
doing each
is.
day. And then you're driving an hour there, you're driving
Mhm,
an hour home. And that's
mhm.
almost like cementing your commitment in that space. Like you had to want it.
Yeah,
Otherwise you wouldn't have stayed. Right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I loved it, and I loved my students. They were brilliant,
Of course.
and I needed my colleagues to see their brilliance.
Of course. Of
Mhm.
course. And so just quickly then, you started there, but you took on some other roles too, before you got into this role that you have now. So
Mhm.
what did some of that transition look like? And then let's jump into, after that, we'll jump into some of your leadership roles currently and talk a little bit about that. But give me a little bit
Absolutely.
about that transition. What did that look like for you? You went from
Absolutely.
teacher
So
to district office.
absolutely. So leaving Henry and moving from middle to elementary, I
Mm.
did that and felt that there was more that I could offer after being in the classroom for a number of years. So I
Sure.
took one of the first teacher leader positions and had the opportunity to be a lead teacher in my larger district near home.
Yeah.
I loved that work because it gave me an opportunity to provide teacher training, coaching, and supporting them, not only in the classroom, but also through the compliance piece of what we do in special
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
Then I was recruited, if you will, by my then
Sure.
director to apply for a supervisor's position. So
Yeah.
I jumped into the foray of district level leadership. Quite honestly, I missed the classroom.
Yeah.
There would be times when I would go to a school, and because you're not in that building every day, the
Yeah.
students don't know you, right? So you
Yeah.
feel sort of
Yeah.
awkward walking into that
Yeah.
space, but I would make myself be known because I would go
Yeah.
often.
Yeah, yeah. It was your favorite part, I'm sure, right?
That's
Yeah,
right, and that
yeah,
became a favorite part of the job because once you move into district leadership, it becomes more about the compliance piece and the
mhm,
management piece and the budget piece and all of those things, but
yeah,
the work was something I still very much enjoyed, and I love the opportunity to coach new teachers.
yeah, yeah. In my career, I've gotten an opportunity to work with a lot of folks that have made leadership transitions from
Mhm,
being the doer to being a supervisor. And we talk about how it's kind of like the difference between being a baker and running a bakery. And in
mm,
my experience, the folks that spent time as the baker looking at in the cabinets and in the refrigerator figuring out what we have to make something magical for the folks that are coming end
mhm,
up becoming the folks who are the best at running the bakery because they know how to set that baker up for success. And it's needed. Both roles are, let your bakers bake and let your other folks come in and help them find success. And so
yes, very
it's
well said. I
Yeah,
love that analogy.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's helpful, right? Because it's a lot of the same skill sets, but now you're
Mhm.
looking to amplify and facilitate the success of others, and kind of understanding that mindset shift can help you make that transition role so that you don't have to be the baker, but you can still celebrate all the wins and all the fun of what your bakers get to do.
That's
So.
right. That's right. That's right.
So, serving as both now the
Mhm.
Chief of Student Services for Marietta City Schools and most recently as the past president of GCASE, how
Mhm.
did those leadership positions influence your perspective on inclusive education today?
I would have to say that my work with GCASE started 8 years ago
Sure.
and gave me an opportunity to meet people from around the state
Yeah.
and gain experiences and exposure to what was and was not happening
Yeah.
outside of my state.
Yeah.
That coupled with my work in Marietta helped drive my passion to ensure that the students in Marietta, not just the students with disabilities, but all students would have an
Yeah.
opportunity to be exposed to
Yeah.
inclusion.
Yeah.
So we created pathways
Mm.
for inclusive opportunities for our students. And that really has been the inspiration behind the work that I do right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so that broader perspective,
Mhm.
looking at the holistic community and creating moments where we can benefit from one another,
Mhm.
um, is uh, a desire worth chasing.
Right.
And yeah, I'm sure you saw as you kind of worked into GCase that that's not always the case in other parts. Like you might have made something in your area, but like it may not be there in other places, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the opportunities that my exposures have provided is creating an organization, a chapter organization within my district called Best Buddies, right?
Oh, okay. All right.
Best Buddies is a non-for-profit that creates chapters in schools and school
Yep.
districts for
Yep.
students who are neurotypical,
Yep.
who then become partners with students who are
Yes.
neurodiverse. And you mentioned our Yes I Can awards. You
Yeah.
know who the facilitator of the event, the MC of
Who's
the
that?
event was that
Who's
night?
that?
Two 10th graders who
Wow.
are Best Buddy chapter members,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
about
How about
creating
that?
pathways for
Yeah.
exposure, everyone's exposure,
Yeah.
teachers, students, the community at large.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, gosh, the type of students that you're shaping and
Mhm.
molding and encouraging and unwrapping. What a great thing you're cooking there. I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
we when I came to Marietta, my superintendent asked me, "What is what is one of the visions that you see for Marietta? One of the things that you would
Yeah.
like to accomplish?" And one of them, believe it or not, although this sounds very simple, one was improving the graduation rate,
Yeah.
right? And in
Hmm.
order to do that, to move us from 56% to what we are now at 87% for
Yeah.
students with disabilities, I knew I had to get students into
Yeah.
inclusive environments.
Yep.
But then on the social side, I
Yep.
had to ensure that the students would be accepted. So my
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
task or objective was
Yeah.
to create an adapted games event, something that's
Wow.
non-competitive but fun that would allow students an opportunity to coalesce on a sports field where they can partner and have activities together. So now we have an adapted games event with 100 special athletes and almost as many volunteers who are ninth through 12th graders.
Wow. That's fantastic. Gosh, I would imagine that any of the families in the surrounding areas of Marietta, they want to be a part of what you're doing. Like, what a wonderful thing that you have there.
Well, thank you. It's definitely one of the things I can't stop doing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm inspired, and so hopefully, I mean, this is part of the thing that we talk about. Like
Mhm.
in the intro to this, we talk about, hey, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together.
Right.
And the whole point of this is that we're trying to prop up exceptional individuals with great minds who are doing great things so that we can
Mhm.
be inspired and encouraged and pull down things that we might be able to use in our neighborhoods and in our
Mhm.
communities. And so I love the richness of the stories that you're sharing because I think that it helps with what we're trying to do. And sometimes getting a broader exposure and seeing new things and hearing new stories can be the piece we need
Right.
to do some
Right.
good work on our own.
That's true. That's true. I'll leave you with one last story about inclusion.
Okay, tell me one more. Yeah.
So, okay, so we had our first friendship formal event 2 weeks ago,
Okay. All
okay?
right. Tell me what that is. Tell me what that is.
Another name for it might be special needs prom, but we
Okay.
didn't want to call it a special needs prom because
Okay.
it really wasn't about students with disabilities, right? It really
Yeah.
was about partnering at a
Yeah.
dance
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
because they just wanna be
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
and when if this weren't a podcast and I could show you a picture,
Yeah.
you would see approximately 40 students in their finest, their suits and their dresses, their cocktail
Yeah.
dresses, they dress for prom,
Yeah.
greeting their peers who
Yeah.
otherwise don't get to go to prom,
Yeah.
and it was a
Wow.
special night. It was a special night.
Gosh, that is so
We danced for
fantastic.
hours.
I believe that. For one of the things that we'll do for folks who follow this podcast, we often share out some links and stuff. And so I know that we can pull some sort of link and point people to that story in that moment. I saw a sneak peek on that.
Okay. Yes.
But we'll make sure that we pull that
Okay.
out. Because, yeah, that's so great. And I didn't know the whole story behind it, but I did know that it looked like there were some folks having a lot of fun. And
Oh, they had a
so I was
ball.
hoping that that would come up.
Yes, they had a ball. They had a
Oh,
ball. Yes,
that's
and so
great.
did I. The adults had as much fun as the children.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
is that kind of supported like most dances are? You got faculty and staff and maybe some parent volunteers. Like, how did you get some of the adults involved?
Here is the beauty of Marietta City.
Yeah.
Um, our Adapted Games is sponsored by our Rotary, and they show up. They don't just write the check, they show up.
Yeah.
They believe that this is their event and they're proud of it. Well, competition breeds wonderful things. The
Yes.
Kiwanis Club said, well, we want to do something. So the Kiwanis Club sponsored and showed up as well at the Friendship Formal. So those adults that you see in the pictures are Kiwanis Club members and the teachers of the students. I saw
Wow.
kids when they saw their teachers walk in the building
Yeah.
that night and walk that red carpet. I
Wow.
saw some hugs. I saw
Yeah.
lots of embracing of
Yeah.
students of their teachers that night. It was so much,
Yeah.
it was so heartwarming, so
Yeah.
heartwarming.
So I got a question. Like, you know, first year teachers can walk into a school and they can look across the hallway and they
Mhm.
can see a teacher that's spinning her craft who's done it for maybe 20 years.
Right.
And it feels super intimidating because like all the little tricks and tips that are going on that make
Mhm.
this classroom come alive. Like you can't put all those skills into somebody at once.
That's
But
right.
somebody who's hearing this story today and being inspired, um, what's like one thing that you could say to them that would help them kind of think about like how can I start becoming
Mhm.
somebody like Michele Sayles Harris, right? How
Mhm.
do I become that kind of person? A lot of people have the dream in their heart, but they're not
Mhm.
quite sure how to start putting some of these pieces together. What would you say to them?
Ooh, I think the first thing I would say is not to give up. You can't
Yeah,
quit. The
yeah,
second thing I would say is teaching is a vocation. It's not a
yeah,
job. You don't
yeah,
get into it just to say that you teach. You get into it because you truly believe that you can influence positively the outcomes of students.
yeah,
I would say to them that 20-year veteran across the hall is your best
yeah,
resource.
yeah,
So befriend them,
yeah,
ask to go and observe them, ask to ask them to share ideas that they
yeah,
might have. Find a partner who has done this for a while, who wouldn't mind teaching you how to expand your craft. And
yeah,
lastly, don't stop learning.
yeah. That's a
Don't
big
stop
part of it,
learning.
right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm still learning.
yeah, yeah. We oftentimes encourage our students to
Hmm.
be learners, sometimes holding up that mirror and giving ourselves both the grace and the encouragement and the push to continue our learning is what we need too. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. And it's
Absolutely.
a joy to be on that process of learning.
It really
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
really is.
So, are you reading anything currently? Like, what are types of things that you bring into your space that keep inspiring you?
Okay, Brian, I'm about to nerd out for maybe
All right.
20, 30 minutes.
All right. All right. Hey, we embrace the nerd life. Like, that speaks to my core. I've been called that my whole life. So, tell me
Yes. All
what you
right.
got.
So I last summer we saw a need to help our teachers and students with autism improve and enhance their craft.
Yeah.
Okay. So I brought together a team of therapists and teachers over the summer
Okay.
to help build a course for teachers of students with autism. One of the therapists, her name is Whitney Smith, said to the group, "We should read Uniquely Human." And I
Okay.
said, "What is that?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, you've never read it?" And I said, "I've never heard of it." She's like, "It's written by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Barry Prezant, and it's amazing." Brian, I picked that book up last June. I finished it before school started,
Yeah.
July 28th, and I have not stopped talking about it all year
Wow.
long. If I read that book 20 years ago, I genuinely feel not only would it have made me a better parent, but
Yeah.
definitely a better educator, right? Because in the book, Barry speaks to how we perceive our students and that our
Mm,
perceptions perhaps need to be refined
yeah.
because they're presenting their best selves, but are we?
Yeah.
So he
Oof.
talks about their
Yeah.
enthusiasms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so for those who may have not heard the title, and I've
Mm-hmm.
heard this book before, but I have not picked it up, and I think I'm gonna go pick it up now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Uniquely Human, yeah?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
the name of the author again, so if folks are getting out their pens and papers and writing this down right now, what was the name of the author again?
His name is Barry Prezant.
Perfect.
Prezant.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, okay, so I've got a new book to read. I'm
You won't put
excited
it
to get into
down.
that. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard it. I think my wife's an educator. I think I
Mm-hmm.
heard her speaking about it before, and for some reason I didn't pick it up. I might actually even have it in the house, and
Oh,
so I
you might.
I might need to go get that from her. So,
Yes. Yes.
um, well, great. Thank you for
Yes.
that.
I have encouraged every administrator of my district to read that book. And
Okay.
every time they come to me with a challenge,
Yeah.
I'll say to them, "Have you read Uniquely
Yeah.
Human?"
Yeah.
And if you can't read it, like if you don't have time, it's on Audible. So you can listen
Yeah.
to it on your drive home.
Yeah. You can listen on your drive home when you're folding laundry, when you're taking care of some of the chores. Like
That's
that's
right.
the beauty of Audible right there.
Right.
Uh, yeah. Leveling up and getting chores done at the same time is not a bad deal.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well,
But that is
great.
my one inspiration. We read a new book every year, my leadership team.
Yeah.
But this book was for me was an addition to that read. And this is
Yeah.
the one thing that I think has really I'm in my 30th year, but I
Yeah.
learned so much
Yeah.
reading his book and really wish I'd been exposed to it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
certainly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will pick that up and I'll drop you a note after I get done.
Oh, please do. You're
I
gonna love
will.
it. You're gonna
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got kind of one final question. But
Hmm.
before I land on that, uh, you know, anything else that you'd like to share about the practice of student services, special education? I know we didn't talk a lot about data-driven decision making and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Anything else that you'd be open or want to share with our listeners before we kind of come to the end of our session today?
Well, I think if I have to think about the work that we do
Hmm.
and think about how we choose to do what we do,
Yeah.
I would say, and you're right, we didn't talk a lot about using data, but
Hmm.
data has to be at the core,
Yeah.
has to be at the center, because if you don't have a roadmap, and I
Yeah.
think data is the roadmap, if you don't have a roadmap, then you really won't know where you're going you'll get lost. Like you'll have these tangential experiences that don't bring you back to center. And I just really think it's important that we keep that at the center, keep data at the center of what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, it's so important. Like when we think about, and we didn't even tap into this, but we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
getting close to the end of our time. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that you have an interest in special education law and compliance and helping our folks, look in the mirror, which data can do to figure out what we're doing, how we're moving forward so that we
Mm-hmm.
can use, like your words, data as a roadmap to take that aspiration into
Mm-hmm.
action of
Mm-hmm.
helping our students get to the places that we want, right? Like,
Right.
and I know that you do that so well. So maybe at a future time, we'll get into maybe some of the nitty gritty of kind of some of the day to day stuff with you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
I would enjoy that.
Absolutely.
Well,
I'll talk to you about our APTO program and how it came about.
okay, well, that's
Yeah.
a little cookie crumb for later. Hopefully, we'll walk that trail. But for today, I got one last question for you. Something that
Okay.
we ask all of our participants. Um, if you could inspire our listeners to take one action for
Mm-hmm.
exceptional connections, what would you suggest?
Ooh, I would have, oh, Brian,
Yeah,
I honestly think right now, where we are in education, it's important for everyone to be aware and involved.
yeah,
I think right now it's important for people to take action and stand for the things that they believe are important to students with disabilities. I think we have to remain constant learners of our craft, and we have to ensure that we, as the educators, are always advocating for what's best for children.
yeah. That's so well said. I appreciate you saying that, and
Hmm.
I like especially how you tied awareness and action together.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think awareness can sound like a passive activity, but it actually requires us to push in uh,
Yes,
so that we can learn better and then do better. And I appreciate that encouragement, Michelle.
certainly,
Yeah.
certainly, anytime. Yes.
Well, this will conclude our episode with Michele Sayles Harris. Thank you so much for sharing such a generous portion of your time. You got a lot of things on your plate, but I am leaving today feeling inspired, encouraged. I've got a new book to read, and I've got lots of thoughts to continue to ponder through. Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
That wraps up this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found inspiration to bring back to your own learning community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to connect with you on social media, so follow RoboKind for more resources and updates on inclusive education. Until next time, keep supporting and celebrating every learner, and remember, together we can empower exceptional minds.